beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherentness. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Sharaputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage trained who wishes to practice the activity of profound perfection of wisdom? He said that the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharaputra. Sharaputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of profound should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly, beholding those 5 also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is also no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition, and practice and consciousness are empty. Sharaputra, likewise, all phenomena and emptiness without characteristics. Unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Sharaputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition, practice, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odour, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on up to including no mind element, no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on up to including no aging and death, no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Sharaputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on dwelling in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also completely awaken to the unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra, the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all, should be known as truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Swan. Sharaputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose in that concentration, commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. Well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you've indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharaputra, Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety along with the world gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, join, highly praise that spoken. I prostrate to the gathering of dakinis in the 3 chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space. By your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation, look after practitioners like a mother and a child. Akasamara Tishadar Samayate. Akasamara Tishadar Samayate. Tayata Om Yate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Swan. By the teachings of the 3 supreme jewels possessing the calf truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified. Shinchen Kriya Soha. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified, and may be separated from problems and harmful conditions to the Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma. May every auspicious and perfect happiness here right. Offering a short mandala. Saji Bhuki Joshi Meto Trari Ravi Nite Gambani Sangeshi Nite Ova Niro Punana Jina Chopashu Kiram
Sanji Cholo Tsari Cholo Chenchuba Dudani Kasuchi Dagi Chushi Petsanaki Dola Pechi Sanji Juba Shu Sanji Cholo Tsari Cholo Chenchuba Dudani Kasuchi Dagi Chushi Petsanaki Dola Pechi Sanji Juba Shu Sanji Cholo Tsari Cholo Chenchuba Dudani Kasuchi Dagi Chushi Petsanaki Dola Pechi Sanji Juba Shu 강기 도전이 전에 따와 당시 공비처럼 당시 주는 던지 공감 개가 장세 뭐 그래서 당연히 가진 참디 잼비 시즌 좀 풀려니 잼비 될 시즌 기술 시기부터 잼비 기술이 될 산지 지점 방어 될 양도 좀 세팅스를
We've been looking at the 5th chapter from Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life and looking at where we are now in the text. So we're not here, just a second. So we're looking at guiding mindfulness as a method for guiding introspection. We have looked at the brief explanation and now we're looking at the extensive explanation. And the way introspection is developed through mindfulness is divided into 2 points: the way mindfulness arises and the way introspection arises from that. In the first 2 lines in verse 33. Let's look at this verse. Sorry, the last 2 lines in verse 32. So let's look at this verse. Just find the file. There it is. So it says, the way they also repeatedly generate recollection of the Buddha. Sorry? I can, yes. Sorry. There you go.
There's somebody in church and can do the Sanji in Jesus Temple. Hansa Terrain, and the Jean is Conjusum Temple de la Kio.
The commentary to these 2 lines says, a person who thinks in this way will also recollect the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Because this happens repeatedly, they will easily generate mindfulness of the 3 jewels.
Das conjunção dela do Chamberlain e junto do sete e das lá and tweet out Sanji Chanson see number the sandwich you know so and chidang see you about the ketchum zang nepala and naranju susu semgi tebe much of us and tinji on the Sanji Chanson see the Samsung Tenandi Nozuli Yomaros, Kizi that Timji Chile Tuina, and tweet out to that, and Sanji Chistrim Chamber Sadi, Conjus Chistrim Chamber D, Jungolis, Gundin Piglia, some language Sungudasra.
So looking at this section, so the way mindfulness arises can be combined with the previous 6 lines that came out of the heading of having correct mental attention, in which we generate the mental attention with respect to the 3 jewels, the 3 objects of refuge. The main point, the main meaning that is conveyed in combining those 2 verses together is that you could say that the 3 objects of refuge are always seeing, they always behold what we do. There's no doubt that this is the case, and yet, due to not having enough faith, strong faith, we doubt that. All right, so there's no sense of shame or embarrassment that arises in our mind on account of not generating just strong faith that trusts that the objects of refuge are beholding, that they're observing. So generating that sense of faith will come through what the last 2 lines in verse 32 says. It says, they also repeatedly generate recollection of the Buddha.
어디다 딘지 템바 고다다 산지 지수 템비 템바 세 산지 지수 템비 템바 디기 아니 칼라 팽비어리스기 시진 경우라야 다 제시 야탄바 지당 템바 세디 칼이냐 이거는 깜디 시진 경우 그거 쪼디 랑기 샘 소야 체딩자 랑기 샘디 차당 공송기 샤만도 마셔봐 아니 송교 제도 시진 경고 송교에서 다 차당 모송기 샤만도 줄나 다 야구요 말이 송인디 서비스 먼저 담은 신경 말 서비스나 아니 상기로 상기 먼저 아니 차당 모송기 샤만도 만들어야 체도 아니 탑대샤바디 아니 먼저야 같이 dombamu yo penataji sojong dombani chana tar sanga doji tebigi lam jubita naji domba partu dombaru mamu shu sonsha ti tartuna manzu sendi ani chadam mosumge doyak chet imba dasi ushujres inza sem chadam gi shawdi kyotsavi jela 아니 자와 가르치바니까 아니 산지 공부는 좀 치투면서 아니 산지 지수 전공 그랬어.
So then in order to be able to do that, we need to guard introspection. We need to guard introspection, and the main purpose, the main need for us to guard introspection is in order to guard the mind. Or often the mind comes under the sway of anger, attachment, and ignorance. So we need to sustain introspection. We need to sustain alertness because of the mind falling sway or under the power of anger, attachment, and ignorance. It is not good or not positive at all to fall under the sway of anger, attachment, and ignorance. So who taught the way to prevent the mind from falling under the control of those afflictive states of mind? Well, the Buddha taught that. And the Buddha taught methods for preventing anger and attachment, and ignorance, for taking control over the mind. In order to do that, the Buddha taught to begin with different levels of vows, beginning with the pratimoksha vows, all the way up to the mantra vow, teaching different levels of vows, different types of, different degrees of subtleties of vows. At the end, we take up those vows in order to make sure that the mind does not fall prey to anger, attachment, and ignorance, that it doesn't come under the control of those afflictive states of mind, so that we'd be able to overcome them. So in order then to be able to do that, after all, it's not going to happen on its own accord. In order to be able to do that, we begin with developing recollection of the Buddha, as it is stated in the last two lines in this verse. They also repeatedly generate recollection of the Buddha. Now, the word for recollection of the Buddha, for recollection in Tibetan combines subsequent and mindfulness, which means that we need to subsequently remember, subsequently become mindful of the Buddha. Let's move on to the second point in this outline, which explains the way introspection arises from that. It says in verse 33, when mindfulness remains at the door of the mind for the purpose of protection, at that time introspection is born, and the one that left returns. In the commentary to this section, it says, at a time when one, through mindfulness, remains alert to protect oneself from the afflictions, then introspection, which analyzes which action is suitable and which is unsuitable, comes into existence, and degenerated introspection returns. Since the skill in practice depends on mindfulness and introspection, one should become adept in this. So whatever we came to know, we guard it together with mindfulness. And then comes introspection, which knowingly engages a certain action, knowing whether it is to be engaged with, or it is to be overcome, or it is to be discarded. Whether this is a suitable action or whether it is not a suitable action. This is how an adept practices. So when you develop expertise in practicing, this is the way that you do it. This is the way of becoming adept in practice.
Aksar chededa, beba chededa, yungu yorda, chidang sawa shiandi, ko yagye doyalaya, njimni sawa shingu yorda, meya, har shin jabadi, kenbe mason wa chewa ni, ani sawa shiyan beba ina, ani tak to ondi, kaya megyo chik, chadru yosares. Har kan shibadi, manye mitono, di, 이 가서 같이 이야기 땅 토네 아니 사와시에 nentuwana ni woni gita yaji drogiyorasra.
So often we become enthused about learning new things. right? So we focus on, or we strive at learning something new. But we need to do that, right? So we need to learn new things in order to make progress, but without being mindful, which means without remembering things that we have come to know previously, there would be no basis for making a progress, for improving. So if you learn new things and yet you do not retain what you came to know before, you will not improve. So we do want to improve, we do want to make a progress, and we do that through sustaining mindfulness with respect to things that we came to know previously. And then we train and learn new things.
Repena nandu namgi hasabataji dombasungu sebi and so and yobasam mayimba yagi royo chedu and the yabu yoyo tembu yoyo chedu pena pena sodar dombadoina and shabdam chedu and sojong tembatan and chanju simbi dombaina that pena tunju toni and nilnesu sennesu and domba yanja sonya la soba kizi domba and manyamba yoya kone peya chedu and chandam ya yana jugoya and the najingi and naji tomba ina pezi and nimata balaya and daki to yan soba daju yan soba lo and so the dombe mintincho kungu yobaina di tayada kezi kome baina di kone peya chedu and diredos.
So just to illustrate that, in order when we got vows that we have taken before, we want to not only guard them, but also improve our ability to do that. We want to guard the vows that we have. So if you have taken a pratimoksha vow, a vow of personal liberation, then you have rites such as the sojong rite in order to confess and purify faults that you have incurred in relation to the vow. Or if you have taken the Bodhisattva vow, then you practice daily the 6-session Guru Yoga 3 times a day, 3 times during the night, in which you review the vow that you have taken. So if you haven't contradicted the vow that you have, if you've maintained it, then that acts as a basis for making it progress, from improving it, making it go from strength to strength. And also a similar thing is done with respect to the mantra vow. We have practices that can be done daily: self-generation, self-entry, for purifying faults or transgressions that we have incurred in relation to the tantric vow. And if we haven't incurred such faults, if it is maintained, then we also want to make it grow from strength to improve it. So this is how we sustain such a process that is involved with recollecting, like keeping it in mind on a daily basis, so that on that basis we can improve.
나게 온 슈사 나게 domba 슈사 내지기 다 아니 수즈이 비다 냠바야 레롱야 부치 타마투나 안 당주디 렌초미도스 다 테마초 당주 렌무투니 다 야니 양부베 아니 온 슈디 아니 나게 domba 냠비기 뜻이 아니 소종 쳇다우디 디차기도 왔어.
Particularly when you look at it from the viewpoint of Tantra. If you have taken an empowerment before, without forming the retreat that makes you serviceable for performing certain actions, you will not be able to do the self-entry practice. If you have done the serviceable retreat, then you can repeatedly do the self-entry practice, And repeatedly, you can take upon yourself the mantra vow, which is, you can say that it is, in some way, you can say that it is equivalent or like the sojourn practice that is prescribed from the viewpoint of the pratimoksha level.
And the Tamja to Jubion Chituaina, Kenny Susu down to the shoulders, Tinza, and it and Dominion Suchia Sova, and the Samago, and it's Susolia, checking Dambridge. Chichados, the Zupe kitchen with Dandinamolia, Sanji Jistimber, and Conjus Jistimiton, the Shijin to deep and so deep and Sanji Tango at Casana, Nanzula Dombaram to Kandajimba. And one manga in PV, Geshe of Kandajimana, the Sanji Unima, Togo is a deep tembiton, and a deep tembiton, and Yanni and the Chambaina, the deep Jujing Marine, the killing chain, and Shiva in something, some of the Yanni and the Ovana, and it conjures with just chamber the English. Deep doggy, and Shijin Soya, Sam Soya, the Junguris.
So we like to receive empowerments, don't we? If we hear about an empowerment being given, then we think that this is something that I want to do or I need to do. So we like empowerment. Like, for example, you might hear that there is a Yamantaka Vajrabharava empowerment that will be given soon, and you think to yourself, this is something that I need. I need to have a Vajrabharava empowerment. So if you do have that thought, then you also need to be thinking that if I do receive the empowerment, I will quickly do the serviceable retreat, the approximation retreat, so that I would be able then to do the self-entry practice, so that I will be able to repeatedly take upon myself the mantra vow, so that it will not completely degenerate, but I'll be able to do it better and better, to improve. So this is the way that we need to think about it, right? Not just to like taking empowerments, but we need to think about it in terms of also the practice that we'll do after that, that will enable us to do the self-entry practice, so that we'll be able to fulfill the requirements in terms of guarding our vows. So in order then to be able to do that, we develop the recollection of the Buddha as it is stated here. They also repeatedly generate recollection of the Buddha, or mindfulness of the Buddha. So when we then repeatedly develop recollection of the Buddha, we might then take vows, receive empowerments, receive certain instructions, personal instructions. An explanation of the tantras might be given to us, and we will be able to guard them through, first of all, repeatedly become mindful of the Buddha. And when we repeatedly become mindful of the Buddha, then we also combine that with the way that we act, and thinking that if I shall perform such an action, that will not be adequate. It would not be right to do this or to do that. It is not in line with the vow that I received that was prescribed by the Buddha, the empowerments, the instructions, the explanation of the tantras that the Buddha gave. It would not be in accord with them. So we'll be able to better distinguish between what we can do and what we cannot do. Through that, we'll also become mindful of the three objects of refuge. And that is all possible. Whatever makes it possible is the sustaining of mindfulness and introspection.
Sorry, Geshe, it was just synchronicity that we just announced that we're going to be doing mental self-initiation once a month, starting in September.
Like announced here?
Yeah, it's just going out in the newsletter this week, and we talked about it
Okay.
It's just that Geshe just talked about that.
Hmm.
His heart.
That tanda konzo didn't talk courage and the dawa gubane dawa rela tema chik doje danjuk konzo group chik lengi insa so the konzo dawa touch ne tanda kran ditola six sons yeah, that's good.
Remato Chistanganzu Chik Namji Chik Lamata Chingu Chisan and Chik Wan's Kavan Tagarang Pitch Jig to Metal Samsung Chik some Kesojers he in some others Chitan one long Mengas in and Togos the Shimaji that the Yubitonita and Suzuki Shukavana. 아니 적응도 단 여부 아니 인류 새로운 찍어야 아니 존중하는 송교마다 간지 산점내 그리지 아니 송요 왔어 근데 이 송야 디 세통이 인류 찍어야 아니 적응으로 산지 고마 턱으로 연나 텔레파비기 안테 이동 친구지다 가서 같이 강하게 동네 친구 지마도나 아니 제비 친구 더 쓰고 말았어.
So I'm just going to repeat what Shuki said. She said that they've just decided to do every month a practice of self-entry of Yamataka Vajraparada, so that whatever Geshe said, taken upon a self-vow, within the context of the self-entry of Vajraparada would be possible. So we're going to do it from now on every month. So it is a good thing to do. Geshe said that it is a good thing to do because often when we hear about a great Lama giving an empowerment, we have that impression that it would be just fine or just enough to receive the empowerment from that Lama. But then when we think about the whole context in which an empowerment is given, then an empowerment is given, oral transmissions are given. We receive and guiding instructions on, for example, the Tantra. And then we need to make effort to work hard in order to use that to be able to attain the Supreme Siddhi, the attainment of the state of enlightenment. And it is possible, it is possible to do it in this time of degeneration, having such a short lifetime on the basis of a tantric practice. So this is not something that is directly explained here in Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, and yet from a tantric perspective, it's good to say that. Then it is possible to attain the state of enlightenment based upon one life or short life, to attain the Supreme Siddhi. But that requires a lot of hard work. Without persevering, going through hardships in a practice, that will not happen.
아니 소종 세디 빼마서 기체우지 먼저 내 담보원이야 샘 차당 왕 쇼가래야 아니 민주적 동맹 민주적 그하고 쇼치 차원자 소종 나 파도는 비지 나 시선 초가세 그러 소종이나 아니 야니 수투리 야니나 가이 수투리 아니 아니 지테스 상바이나 아니 시선 초가세 상비기 다 리트리지면 다 공부해서 먼저 디 아니 먼저 추존디 공부 천대인지 그래야 교야래야 엔디나노래야 시선 초가여버지 마차버도 아니 원이 공부 친 상세데 차기요 말했어 그래서 단지처럼 양아지 시도지 아니 시대 핑계만 샤지 상대를 가려야 다 아니 나한테 슈기압치니 아니 공부디 gomba sendinch and human duty del navy del human navy and gender was chala years on the ship gavana mobile delia shisum show changanch down to chana gomba sendinch was the resource some use
So we've mentioned that, but also sojong for monastics is so important. It is so important because having taken a pratimoksha vow as an ordained person, we still incur infractions with respect to the vow that we have taken, because our mind is still under the control of anger, attachment, and ignorance. So in order then to be able to purify those infractions, we do the sojong practice. Actually, in order to be able to be a fully qualified functioning monastic community, we need to be able to do the 3 basic rituals, which are the sojong, summer retreat, and the ritual at the end of the summer retreat. If we're able to have a monastic community that fulfills these 3 basic requirements, then that monastic community becomes a fully fledged monastic community. So we call this place a gompa, right? So a gompa is normally taken to be a monastery with a monastic community. So to have a fully qualified, a fully fledged monastery with a monastic community, the monastics need to be able to perform those 3 basic rituals. Without them, we're not going to be fully qualified, a fully functioning monastic community. So keeping that in mind, we do need to work hard in order to be able to establish those 3 basic rights in the future. And it is up to us. It is up to us to push hard and to create the prerequisites, the conducive conditions for being able to do that. And if we're able to do that and to have a fully functioning monastic community, then we create a certain longevity to a monastery or to monastic community living in this place, because that's going to become a fully qualified, a fully functioning monastic community.
Kanji limchen di na lo ya gomba sindin chongba ina tadi ya ko shuji ro astra tiza di yong ya la ya shisam gu choga ya gu suwa la ya ani chi shisam gu choga ani genyon chingni gi chaba da tsumo tso tohta chig di chi chang bogre ma do mancham ba ji khaddu na ya chi 아니 주거셔 되바이나 이알라 되바이나 샤부십셴나 다와순 데리 순고르스 이알 피니까지 아니 지심에도 슈 기비까야 아니 부신의 슈 예비까야 같이 아니 존도키 차원이 치 또 아니 퇴송이야 되지 아니 이알 슈코고라스 비까야 아니 또 퇴송도 미 맞지 아니 주거장 되바이나 या ठोला ठोलेस या ठोला रहना गाय ताने यो माने अनि सोजों दे यो माने सम ला जोरस इजा इङे ले nga ju chang de ru 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 chi 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 le ba ka so ta chi sang su khari yo ba ani chi chi ga khari yo tu so ru 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 chi ang chi ani bu yong ya do chi sam go de ne sam sam de ngu dos.
Without this fully qualified gompa, which means monastic community, we'll have no gompa, we'll just have a Dhamma center. So this is when we think of where we live. So we have this place, this continent, we can have a fully qualified, fully functioning Gompa in this continent if we become a fully qualified monastic community that performs those 3 rites. And in order for that to be possible, then we're not going to have the basis for creating those 3 basic rituals: sojourn, the summer retreat, and what happens at the end of the summer retreat. So normally the summer retreat is done at a time in which the nature is teeming with life of insects and so forth. So in the summer retreat, you restrict your movement, coming and going, so that you will not harm living beings through those activities of traveling, of coming and going. So to be able to do that, then you need to develop a certain degree of harmony. Within that harmony, with that harmony, agreement, and so forth, the conditions, the foundation for becoming a fully qualified monastic community that can do those 3 rituals will not come to pass. Children, Kabdila Yakadi, Dawa Tambo Niba Sumba, Chuni Tambo Nibarwa. The Gagi Yaka did Logarwa. Children Kabdila Yame, Dawa Chuni Tambo Nibala, Sovarway Yamela. Children do to the Jawatan Choga.
Do you do things like that? Do you do things? You Koran, Lombo Koran, to the dead things. Do Koran Gombaro.
Just ask Geshe about the timing for a summer retreat. In India, obviously, the summer retreat is done during the monsoon time. So it's around, let's say, the months of June, July, August, I reckon, maybe before, maybe after. So here, given that the summertime is probably December, January, February, I was just wondering if you can change the timing of this ritual. Traditionally it was prescribed according to the Indian calendar. And Geshe said that that can be done because the purpose of the summer retreat is to to abstain from great movements at a time in which life is teeming, or the nature is teeming with life, which happens around the hot season, the rainy season, and so forth. So provisions for determining the time for the summer retreat were given in the Vinaya tradition.
I'm just planning the summer retreat in my head, but our Theravada brothers and sisters are just starting right now in Australia, and they tend to do it at this time of year. So I was just wondering what, like December, August, yeah. So they start like July. So it's really more just coming out of winter. So we're doing it this time. Same time.
Australia 택맹기 초가 된서 이제 단다 근데 고츠에서 나와 개와 구바 주가라든지 이러시아라 택맹기 초가 가시까 그래서 다가는 이제 텐상 다가는 냐네 되게레스
야 뜻이
사실 다갑딜라디 나초 뭔가 서로서 제로 좀 갑딜라디
디 코란 속에 상문지를 오늘이 되게 나오는다. 이거 디스테이어를 들어. 너 유지도 된 거였어. 너 유지도 된 거였을 때 마스버터리 내가 쉬지. 그 뒤 산지점 된들이 디 진주 때는다. 아니 또 외우는 사자로 써봤지. 뒤에 나다 구조기 너 유지는 된 소리기. 개가로만 찍고래야 아니 산지 때문에 손질 지혜지가 산지 때문에 양내증이 개가로만 찍고래야 상무 당셔 많이 봐. 잠들린 코로나야 아니 마음발에 다시 연구여봤다. 대비된 조건 같이 아니 소샤 상선 난딩 처리했어.
in the Vinaya literature, it is said that things like the summer retreat should be set according to the season of your location, the season of the place that you live in. So Geshe feels that this is an important point. In the Tibetan tradition, they follow the explanation of the Vinaya that was expounded by masters such as Shakraprabha in Gunaprabha. And Geshe had the opportunity to study those systems, which, those two masters have said that the timing of those retreats should be done according to the seasons of the locality where you live. Which means that it's not that in performing such rituals, you only think about how it used to be in India, but you think of how is it going to work when Buddhism moves or travels to other places? How's it going to work?
In the
Jesus. Well, if it's about sojong and so forth, it's not really about chill thought. It's just for monastics.
Maybe not helpful, but in terms of seeking changing, and the summer is longer than 2,000 years ago, it comes earlier.
So Paul is saying that now it seems that the seasons are changing comparing to 2,600 years ago. The summer comes earlier and it's also longer. Suffering is longer, I'd say. Dila tadi namshi gyo dogerwa. But tensa yaga de tes nga bolegere ne gyunjin bodegres. Avas la chibes.
Dirida 지금 유비들 간지 이야 대야라야 이야기 그거 상관없어. 그거 상관없어. 이야 그거 쪼디 또 쪼디 아니 퇴순 동이 해야지. 가자 가르스는 가자 심지 마음이 무슨 마음이 소차야 내버려야자. 아니 종기 자와디 뇽땅 거였어. 군카 사감 리기 아니 차츠 메비까야 무슨 뇽하다서 이제부터 그 가구 토니 이안내기 저런 상거요 말이다.
The point is, when you perform this summer retreat ritual practice, is to use the time in order to do more study, reflection, and meditation, and to restrict your movements, to minimize your movements because of the harm that they will inflict upon insects and so forth. Since during the summertime there are more insects, then doing a lot of travels, a lot of walking and so forth would be detrimental to them. Then during that particular period, then traveling here and there is minimized. In the winter, when it is colder and there are less insects, there is no particular need or purpose for a yane or summer retreat. So it is particularly designed for that time of the year.
manche degyo manis azna chubit seba shini chini ani chubit seba chonga ni chini and dumbi sunchu the gebat se ondi peti ani yarka zodo was pelaya ani sa ki za kamacha do yare ani busin zodo yare ichigi and kun deve namora ya log gayesench Lord Gaius and he, and that was some months on ya. Ya can juke discharge. But did on the Joris. The town got up on Sunday, 지단 차고 있어.
So in the Vinaya traditions, there are provisions for adapting those rituals to the place that you live in. So, for example, while in India this summer retreat lasts for 3 months, in Tibetan it lasts for 45 days. Since the summer season is shorter, they start on the 15th of the 6th month, and it goes through the end of the 7th month, which means for 45 days. And therefore, when you look at how those practices are referred to in literature, for example, the end of the summer retreat ritual is called adventitious or temporary retreat, or temporary end of summer retreat ritual, in keeping in mind that the timing or the length of that summer retreat can be changed according to where you live, where the summer is, how long the summer is, and so forth.
The Sumba Chamber, the Shijing is Samsung, Jobal Sulis. Don't be Tsultrim of Sultan, give a children the Sunjin Tsultrim of Sultan. Tambo don't be Tsultrim of Sultan, Gosunki, Kunju, Tapal and Bebatan, Yamason, Tambo Gosunki, Kunju, Tapal, Bebala Sun, Lunga Kunju, the Tabata, same Kunju, the Taba, Nanga, the Chavik of Shibo. Tambo Lunga Kunju, the Tabala, she, Lugi Chavik Kunju, Ono la Tabatan, Tava Sodan TV, Lavjata, Sholum Shan Javata, Navy Kunju, the Tabo, Tambo, Lugi Chavik Kunju, Ono la Tabani, Rishi Tambo, Gimbi Sim, Dun Kinji Shijin, Yazidaki Shijin, Zontoban, never chas.
Let's look at the next point, the way to train in the conduct of guiding the mind by means of mindfulness and introspection. There are a few points in that section, beginning with the way to train in ethics of refraining from negative actions. After that, we're going to look at the way to train in ethics of gathering virtuous Dhamma. And the last point would be the way to train in the ethics of working for the benefit of sentient beings. Let's look at the way to train in ethics of refraining from negative actions. Again, here there are a few points. The first is making effort to purify all conduct of the 3 doors. Then we're going to look at guarding against all deterioration. Making effort to purify all conduct of the 3 doors is divided into 3 points. Examining the conduct of body and speech, examining the conduct of the mind, and explaining the context for permitted and prohibited actions. There are 4 points relative to examining the conduct of body and speech, examining one's motivation before acting with the body, advice related to actions like looking, application to other behaviors, and examining the posture.
Sem Tawata, Lugi Chavu Pon Tawati, Lugi Chavatita, two Jondu Chikalia. I have the loss. In the Kandata is lovely, Zavi, Sangi, anything touch, Luna Don Thomas Sadi, Saint Salamid, and Shanla Nubi. Shen Shidan Chiba Don Thomas. Shen Shidan Chiba Don Thomas Soyas. In the Shanla Unsu never be Kago Mase, Shanla Nubi, she Kubayan Chini, and it Kashini, Luna Kunjo Domedi, Lea, Domas Lagoras. In the Nandun Jodu Chilikolia, any Chetan Suzu Chetu, Jodu Chego. Reading Siena Mandovich and Jondu Chigueta and Sanji Gomad Mosuna. How the Chavas race?
So the first point refers to the inspection of the motivation prior to performing certain actions, such as, for example, actions of body and speech. So when you walk somewhere, when you sit or reside in a certain place, you first of all want to make sure that your actions of body and speech do not harm others. You want to abstain from actions that are detrimental to others, plus, in addition to that, the basis of such harm. So not only we want to abstain, to refrain, this is the meaning of vow, abstention from actions that are harmful to others, we also want to abstain from the basis of such harm. That is relevant to traveling to a particular place, going to a particular place. We normally go or travel to a certain place in having a certain goal in mind, but also when we perform such actions, we want to make sure that they're not done in conjunction with harming others. We want to abstain from harming others and the basis of such harm.
디라다 때는 론도 제초거다. 저단 론도 제초거です. 이는야 론도 제일까야 셴려야 성자님 마당지 소수 편집부 상 조친 조셔려야 무슨 소세바이노 녀바침 차거です. 디 만나바지 아니 콜롱콜 디베지 아니 sabsabchin 조고 삼성디 콜롱지 여니 드로니 세셔바이나 땡땡 녀바 총어였어요.
So we do perform such actions, right? We do travel to certain places or stay or live in certain places. We do that, and we also need to perform those actions. But if those actions are done without having any sense of consideration for others, in that we don't think of others at all, then if we travel, for example, to a particular place and we do not have any sense of consideration for insects that are killed in the action of going, we create great fault, a grave misdeed. If you travel to that particular place, but you are considerate of insects that could be squashed, you're trying as much as possible to refrain from that, and yet you end up killing insects because you had a sense of consideration for them to begin with. The fault that you accrue is much lesser.
제베노노야 로소디치 리시탐도 콜롱진지 샘드니 켄제탄 드니 케미보시 시버친 디치 콜롱진지 조나 임보 치젠도 니베미와 송토가 네버 차오스.
So let's look at verse 34 in the commentary to that. Initially investigate whether this mind is flawed. At the time I shall remain contained like a piece of wood. Before engaging into any physical action such as walking or talking, investigate this mind of yours to see whether the motivation for the actions is flawed or not. In case flawed motivations has arisen, then while remembering the antidote against the afflictions, remain like a piece of wood and do not be moved by the motivation.
Tirda tatu di kena kaldi nandu tat chunju nyaminchi kalya ani kulun kenjen so dushudi ani rambin yiji shen yawato ran jeban jimbi jinjin sambe wangi rondu jebana wangi tat dushud chagawas wa chanju sing minju chok chagawas hinza ani di mahimba Shendun Sambitol, Shendun Tunini, and Jean Chipuch, and Jebason Dingi, Sangi, Torche, and Shenjin Konilanche, and Drondu Chetuena, and a Kuba Campo, near a new shoes Melania, and it's in the Shanich, and Tona something. Come up with Tuena. That's how you send the jetty bus.
So here when we look at inspecting our motivation prior to certain physical activities, then we want to, particularly here when we study this material in Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva of Life, recognize that a self-centered, self-interested mental attention is the worst type of attitude or motivation that you could have. This is adverse to the Bodhisattva training. So not having an attitude that is self-centered, self-interested, rather than that, being concerned about the welfare of others, discarding your own self-interest, self-cherishing attitude and exchanging it for an attitude of cherishing others is the type of attitude that we take, so that wherever we go, for example, even if we cannot accomplish a great benefit to others, we still do that in thinking, may I be able to bring some benefit to others.
어들이 디자 당한 수익이 비기게 좀 양치 걸어야 아니 젠베 송고요 소디 잠주 생긴 라자 dombat 수수 소디 샘송고요 어딘지 지금 같이 이 갈채와 있느냐 시안지 편마도는 내가 맞지를 주더니 조고 삼비기 아니 템버 디손친 드라이나 아니 감바 살수가 아니게 삽삽로친 투야 소바 텐데 용사가 왔으라.
So particularly when we take up the training on the basis of this text, Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva of Life, we need to become mindful mainly of our Bodhisattva training, of the necessity to guard the mind in light of the Bodhisattva trainings that we undertake. In thinking that if I'm not going to be able to be of benefit to others, at the very least, I want to abstain from harming them. And if we do that, and we take that as our object of mindfulness, in the sense that this is what we are mindful of, this is what we remember, the training that are based on Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva of Life, which are Bodhisattva trainings, then even as far as just walking somewhere, we are going to be more careful in where we step, that we're not treading on insects and so forth.
제베나 베는 좀은 이기다 전주 직 계속 가면 경험 판매를 써봐 소기 직 아니 드럽이 걸어야 감바 포단이 바이네야 아니 랍셔 여러스 베 아니 도다 침부 슈치 베 감바 미요야 다치는 거 써버디 아니 가자나 여러스 디 비 감바디 니 끈 좋은 틱틱틱 세마타야 소디 담부 감비 파디 주 드라이나 and those two 드라이나 that 총아요 세버스 감바 디 드루츠 치 드라자와나 사마가 고대야도지 드라츠무타 근데 용거스
제선디야 가르데
those two 감바디 슈드 케바이나 드라총 디투나 드라치야
자체야 나 보텐서 트로도르와
이거 트로도르는 가슴이 또 살아.
So such trainings are also contained within the trainings of monastics. Like, for example, when you look at how the mode of conduct was formulated for novice monks and nuns, or for fully ordained monks and nuns, details, even as far as your way of walking, were formulated. So the way that you, for example, step, not creating a lot of noise, right? Not kind of heavily stomping down when you walk to a particular place, not kind of walking on your heels, so to speak, but first of all, when you take a step, then you're resting your foot on the next step, beginning with the toes, and then you bring down your ankle, rather than first of all your ankle hitting the ground, which creates a greater noise. Then the way that those rules were formulated, even for walking, is first of all place your toes on the ground, and subsequently place your heel. If you're walking in high heels.
Then you got tower so the dream, love shall she's. Nikita Kunju Chitamatan, two weeks Chitter Chawatan, Hansa Shin, Tondon, Chitter Tawatan, Nansu is the Tawa. Tambu Nikita Kunju Tawanis, you mean you want Tawan, no document chatting. Never send it out, Niki Pop the Tawachas.
So first off, we looked at the verse that explains how you inspect your motivation prior to the performance of physical actions. Now, the next point in the outline explains the advice related to actions like looking and so forth. And there are 4 points in relation to this advice. A general presentation of where to direct one's gaze, how to act when fatigued, how to act when in the presence of other beings, and how to act when resting. Let's begin with a general presentation of where to direct your gaze.
Using English to talk songs to us about you may you want to know that in chess and constant him about the and to shoot kid. They were same young girls. Him about choosing what I want to know that in the same young girls.
So there are a couple of reasons that were explained in relation to a general presentation of where to direct your gaze. So looking at verse 35, it says, I never allow myself to be distracted and do not look around meaninglessly. Rather, with a firm mind, I always look with my eyes downcast. So in the first 2 lines, it says that I never allow myself to be distracted and do not look around meaninglessly. Because if you are going to look around meaninglessly, it will give rise to a mind that is greatly distracted, that is all over the place. So if we allow our mind to be meaninglessly distracted, we could end up in situations that are dangerous. So therefore, I shall never allow myself to be distracted and not to look around meaninglessly.
Never somebody, Lina Pavitavacha said, giving people never send this. Without the witnesses, he detached Yashin Kansam, Ning Pavitavacha was.
So we explained the first part of this verse before engaging, I shall never allow myself to be distracted and look and run meaninglessly because this causes the mind to degenerate. That's the first 2 lines. Now, with respect to the last 2 lines, rather with a firm mind, I always look with my eyes cast down, with a virtuous object firm in my mind, right? So with a firm mind, it means that the mind is firm with respect to a virtuous object. It is holding fastly to a virtuous object. I shall always look with my eyes cast down, one nyashin in front of me. Nyashin is a certain unit of distance. Nyashin said the mid-dawn,
Yashin is a little joyous. Are you need to draw with you? Couldn't give you become Yamich, Shintelia, Shimon Katula, Pagini, Shin Koyaki, you was on tires, you were the Pagini traveling to each in the Yashin. You can't find.
Well, the unit that is used here is the unit of a piece of wood that is used to harness 2 cows or 2 bulls that are plowing fields, right? So when we think of a time of old, when you plow your field, you have 2 buffaloes or cows working together. There's a kind of piece of wood that is connecting the 2 of them. That's the distance. Yeah, so if you come across something like that, just measure it and let us know.
간지 meter 칸도 체가 되지.
Yeah, it's probably 1.5 meters. Sorry?
그 구셔 따간 거지. 먼저 지 라마 이위신이 지원이 랑상 아니 찍버치니 아니 파스타야디 구셔를 쓰고 말았어. 지 담보 아니 고쿠스치는 칼리칼리 야타야 어디지 쓰고 말았어.
Also, it is connected with a certain mode of behavior that is considered to be more respectful. So, for example, when you meet a precious lama, then rather than kind of immediately, gazing upon them as kind of being your equal, you said that kind of you interact with them on a timid basis, right? So, kind of first of all, your gaze is downcast, and then you can slowly lift your gaze up.
나긴 망고 송사랬어. 아니 지당기 소주기 나무기 신이 그게 지가 요즘 담을이었어. 저 아니 소주기 비주체 봐요. 지당 마고 차고 그랬어. 근데 게임스로 니 나와요. 그냥 가게요 맞. 당가 망고 송사랬어. 아니 게임 거는 수사가요. 아니 대주에 서버도 게임 거는 시제때로 서버. 우리 망고 수지. 케어 말했어. 이 나와요. 케어 말했어. 이거 그 데빌 로단 세워이네요. 아니 나와 터나 그 요사 말했어. 나와 메주지. 아니 소수기 가서 뒤지. 나메 터네. 제바이나 디 니바 차기어스.
And since we mentioned a certain mode of conduct that is respectful or disrespectful with respect to the teacher, the spiritual friend, it is also said that making use of things or possessions that belong to the spiritual teacher is also disrespectful in the sense that if you use them without having sought permission, then this is disrespectful. If you obtain permission, of course, that is all right. So Geshe's teacher, when Geshe stayed with his teacher gave him permission to make use of certain things. He said, don't worry about it. Of course, you can use that. You don't need to ask permission. You don't need to ask questions. Just whatever is around, it is also for you to use. So if you do it like that, then there's no fault. But if you do, if you are, for example, in the house or the room of your teacher, and then you behave as if there's no problem in using whatever is there without asking permission, then that is regarded as disrespectful. Geshe had a dream yesterday where he was in the room of the abbot of Namgyal Monastery, which is also Geshe's teacher, and he sat down on his bed. Then he thought to himself immediately, this is not right. This is not okay to just be sitting on the bed of Chonten Rinpoche. So immediately stood up and sat down on the floor rather than sitting on the bed. So Alan was asking, I read a commentary that to purify a fully broken root Bodhisattva vow, one needs to recite 100,000 Vajrasattva mantra. Is this correct? Will doing one self-entry practice purify all the breakage of the root Bodhisattva vows, or does one need to do repeatedly to completely purify? Shansen Dombergi Tsatung Bed Shabaina Tamatang Tisha Shabaina the Dojisen by Igya Pumchik Dungogresa the Kansan the Gogreves Gosamares pena kesi dungeon lewa inarwa dungeon lewa ina yan dungeon sembala tune depa khan satung kan jungwa de yan be thagirbe semana diga la yan igya boom chik sagres.
다들 쭉 이 샤담 칼이야 콜모리 간지리야 라리야 서비스 그러 먼저지 에나 dombi mintu cholya dombi mintu chol khoya delya semnaya ji chochongye mebaina ani 가서다 chochong choshuk cha고 mebaina nibaina 아니 이게 뭉치는 뭉쳐 담을 때 봐이네요. 아니 다야를 카고래도 왔어. 여러 지금 마음 속을 때디 이게 이거 다 세디 카고 빼려스. 디비 정야 망파야기 개바요레스. 근데 아니 까 마무지래야 디송도스.
First of all, it depends upon one's motivation. In that, even if you do a practice for purification of negativities or downfalls that you have incurred before, if you don't have a strong feeling or sensation that arises in your mind when you think of having committed actions that are adverse to the vows that you should be guarding, then even if you recite 100,000 recitations, even if you recite 1,000,000 recitations, it's not going to cut it. His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself says that it is difficult to expect that a recitation of the 100-syllable mantra, the Bodhisattva mantra, will completely purify your negativities, but at the very least, it will prevent your negativities from magnifying.
단다 당주네야 당 원시에 비비 아니 자동 타세디 너무 그런 썰 터비고 그랬어. 이 자동 총선을 지금 너무 양심 양게 우리가 아니 다바 찍바로 왔어.
Now, in the context of a self-entry, then you're attaining a new vow. Right, so the vow is newly generated in your mind. That being the case, if you wonder, will my root downfalls be purified? Well, if a vow is newly generated in your mind, then root downfalls have been purified.
난 지단 다수를 되려야 내가 되게 때문에 다수 이러지 최고였어 그랬어. 내가 그 다수를 단다디 아니 소정을 써봐 당지 당주내야 원시를 써봐 아니 내가 다고래서 원이 싸우니 같이 아니 다 미기비 추진 친구 좋나 다 아니 혼자 창성 싸우다 답이 아니 수전도 아니 이거야 로고다스 와.
So then with relation to the purification of faults, transgressions, and so forth, Geshe reckons that there could be two levels to that. One of them is a temporary purification of transgressions or downfalls. And the second is for them to be completely purified. So for a temporary purification, we have practices such as sojong, self-entry, obtaining empowerments, and so forth. This is a temporary, occasional purification of negativities, downfalls, and so forth. If you want that purification to be more thorough, to be more definite, then to the point in which they will not arise again, for that you need to have a more thorough approach. Like, for example, to do a correct preliminary practice. So if you do the preliminary practices perfectly and correctly, that would be more, rather than being a temporary purification of transgressions, that would be a thorough or definite one.
Dedi nan 추시도 나라 생명이야. 난 솔직히 내 될이야. 오늘 청강 직사트는 약부여서의 상승. 소와치. 근니시 kon 레서로 레서스 인간들 인상방을 좀 체치스지. 만다라 미뉴스 장한. 롱투바나 나라 냠슈치에 데바이스 에는 장도 치사야 만도 치사야 아니 차도 사야 너네 다가라야 네 다가라야 다가는 나라야 그냥 민주주의 규칙 안고는 갔다는 땅치 아니 견수 데바이나 만천 냠슈치야 나라이나 디 사고르스 제 데바이스.
So Geshe has been here for a few years, and now when he thinks of this place, living in this place and so forth, he thinks that if we'll have people here that have done the preliminaries in their entirety, it will create some difference in this place. It will make this place be special. So in the future, if we have a group of a few people, 25 people, let's say, and those people will have obtained their transmission for the preliminaries, and Geshe has a kind of a wish or a desire to form a group that does those preliminaries together, either the refuge, mandala offering, prostration, preliminaries, sets of 100,000 repetitions. If we form a group in the future for people who would like to do those preliminaries, Geshe is also interested in doing that, so we can do them together.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you very much. Bye.
그동안 그랬다. 저는 그 고생했어요. 공권에서 차지 좁아서.
Oh yeah. Okay. Hey, Graham. Graham, are you with us?
Oh, can you hear me? Hi.
Yeah, I can hear you, Graham.
What's up?
Sounds as if he's kind of. All right. Okay, I'll talk to you maybe in the afternoon.
Okay, I'll see you at the tutorial. Okay, mate. I guess like.
It sounds like you're speaking through a typing machine.
Yeah, it makes funny noises. Is that all right now? That's better.
All right. Well, do you remember that you had a discussion before with Geshe about the Chandakiri statue?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So are you still onto it? You're still interested?
Yeah, of course.
저는 단다 예리다 코닝냠도 깨지치 두 사람.
So can you talk to Gary and Colin about it?
Gary.
Yeah, Gary. Mr. Gary Fox.
Yeah, I've got to see about some other things for him as well. But
yeah. Yeah, so mention it to him.
Okay, well, yeah, I've got his phone number, so I can give him a call. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'll see you this afternoon.
See you this afternoon. Take care.